A 12-amino-acid peptide. That's it. 12 amino acids sitting inside a protein your body already makes, doing nothing anyone had noticed, until an algorithm looked at all 20,000 human protein-coding genes at once and said, that one. That one suppresses the appetite 10 times more powerfully than any drug 30 million Americans are already taking. And the side effects? So far, none detected. That discovery is one of 4 stories from yesterday that each independently would rearrange how you think about what's coming. Together, they rearrange it even faster. So first, Stanford's Peptide Predictor didn't just design a new molecule. It didn't synthesize anything really novel. It simply read the human genome, the whole thing, and it found something that evolution had already built and hidden. Now, the algorithm scanned all 20,000 protein-coding genes for sites where a specific enzyme, one already linked to obesity, could cut proteins into smaller, bioactive fragments. Out of that scan, 373 candidate pheromones, 2,683 possible peptide fragments, 100 tested in brain cell cultures, and 1 derived from a protein called BRINP2, which researchers have named BRP, lit up hypothalamic appetite control neurons tenfold more strongly than even GLP-1 itself. In lean mice and mini pigs, a single injection before feeding cut food intake in half within an hour. In obese mice, 14 days of daily injections produced 3 grams of fat loss, while untreated mice gained 3 grams. Their movement didn't change. Their water intake didn't change. No anxiety behavior, no digestive distress. And that last part matters enormously because anyone who's taken semaglutide or knows someone who has can tell you about the nausea, constipation, the muscle wasting. BRP in these animal studies produced none of it. So think about what just happened mechanically. Traditional drug discovery starts with a known target and works backwards. So you find a lock and then you design a key. But this went the other direction entirely. Scan everything the human body produces, all of it, and then ask which of these fragments does something powerful that nobody's noticed. It's the difference between searching your house for your keys and having someone scan every object in your house and say, oh, that thing on your shelf, the one you thought was decorative, it opens a door that you didn't know existed. BRP was in every human body all along. We just didn't have a system that could evaluate thousands of candidates simultaneously against functional criteria that no research team could process at that scale. A company's been formed, and human trials are next. Now layer on the second Stanford finding, published the same day. Roughly 10% of people taking GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, the ones generating $60 billion in annual revenue, carry genetic variants that make those drugs less effective at lowering blood sugar. These are variants in the PAM enzyme gene that produces a paradox, higher circulating GLP-1, but reduced biological activity. Researchers spent a decade confirming this across human studies, mouse models, and clinical trial data before publishing. 10% of patients getting a drug that works less well for them, and until yesterday there was no test for it. These 2 findings arrived from the same university on the same day, and they described 2 halves of the same transformation. One says, we can computationally discover therapeutics the body already makes, and the other says we can genetically identify who will and won't respond to the therapeutics we already prescribe. When those capabilities develop in parallel, and they are right now at accelerating speed, medicine stops being just a game of averages. Your doctor doesn't prescribe what works for most people. Your doctor prescribes what works for you, chosen from a library of interventions your own biology already contains. The Century Report has tracked this compression from MindRank's AI-designed oral GLP-1 reaching phase 3 in 4.5 years, which is super fast, to Eli Lilly's $2.75 billion deal for 28 AI-generated drug compounds documented back on March 30th, to Anthropic's acquisition of Coefficient Bio for biological discovery. The BRP finding, published yesterday, is the most vivid example yet of what this pipeline produces. Not a better version of an existing drug, but an entirely new therapeutic class pulled from the body's own hidden catalog. Okay, let's shift away. Now there's the study that overturned 50 years of scientific consensus. The Weizmann Institute, publishing in Science, analyzed twin databases from Sweden and Denmark, including, for the first time, data from twins raised apart, and found that genetics account for approximately 50% of human lifespan variations. Previous estimates had settled around 20-25%, something like that. Some large studies even put it below 10. This finding at least doubles the accepted number. The methodological advance was specific and it was elegant. Earlier studies couldn't separate what the Weizmann team calls intrinsic mortality, which is deaths from biological aging, from extrinsic mortality, such as accidents, infections, environmental exposure. When you can't make that distinction, the genetic signal gets buried under statistical noise from deaths that have nothing to do with your DNA. The Weizmann researchers built mathematical models and simulated virtual twins to filter out external causes, and when they did, the genetic signal emerged at twice the strength anyone expected. One number really jumped out. Up to age 30, the risk of dying from dementia shows heritability of approximately 70%, not 50, 70. Far higher than cancer or heart disease. If you've been following the Alzheimer's detection work this podcast has covered, the olfactory nerve fiber destruction identified just yesterday in the April 12th edition, the blood draw predicting symptom onset 3 to 4 years early, back from February 23rd, also the protein folding blood test from March 12th, this finding reframes all of it. When the genetic architecture of who gets dementia becomes mappable at this level of confidence, and you combine it with early biomarkers that can detect the disease years before symptoms, and you add therapeutic interventions that are most effective in that early window, those three streams don't just add together, they multiply. You go from managing decline after the fact to identifying risk, confirming onset, and intervening before cognitive symptoms appear. For a condition affecting over 50 million people worldwide, it's not incremental progress. This is a category change in how humanity relates to Alzheimer's disease. Let's shift away. Another story. 5 days. That's all it took. Anthropic announced Project Glasswing on April 8th, 5 days ago. By yesterday, regulators on 2 continents had convened emergency sessions with institutions responsible for keeping financial systems stable. The UK response brought together the Bank of England, the Financial Conduct Authority, the Treasury, and the National Cybersecurity Center, coordinating urgent talks with major banks, insurers, and exchanges. This follows the U.S. Treasury convening Wall Street CEOs, Goldman, Bank of America, Citi, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, within 48 hours of the same announcement. 2 of the world's most significant financial regulatory systems both moving within the same week over the same AI capability. And the picture gets more complicated. The Guardian published a detailed investigation questioning whether Anthropic's framing of Mythos was substantiated or primarily a communications exercise. Cybersecurity expert Jameson O'Reilly pointed out that 0-day vulnerabilities, while technically significant, are rarely how real-world breaches actually happen. Anthropic's own media lead has publicly documented the company's communication strategy. But then, there's TechCrunch's reporting that Trump administration officials appeared to be encouraging banks to test Mythos for vulnerability detection. So the same administration that designated Anthropic a supply chain risk and is currently appealing a federal injunction protecting the company, that same government, through different arms, is simultaneously calling Anthropic a threat and urging banks to adopt its most powerful tool. That contradiction tells you quite a bit about the current moment and how the current administration is responding to it. The capability is significant enough that institutions feel they have to respond, whether that response is emergency coordination, skeptical investigation, or simply adoption. And this is happening on the clock. Anthropic's own offensive cyber lead estimated 6 to 12 months before comparable capability is broadly distributed, including from Chinese labs. The governance infrastructure for frontier AI capability is not being designed in a conference room and rolled out on some schedule. It is being assembled under pressure and across all these different jurisdictions right now in front of us in real time because the alternative, waiting, simply isn't available. Let's shift again. Let me take you to Pilbara, northwestern Australia, red desert iron ore country. 10,000 workers, rail lines, ports, processing facilities, accommodation for a small city. All of it currently running on imported diesel. Fortescue, one of the world's largest iron ore producers, announced yesterday that its islanded renewable grid will reach 290 megawatts of installed capacity by early next year, enough to run daytime green processing across its entire mining operation. Full system, 1.2 gigawatts of solar, over 600 megawatts of wind, 4 to 5 gigawatt hours of battery storage, targeted for completion by the end of 2028, 2 years ahead of original schedule. The economics are the story here. Fortescue expects to save $100 million in fossil fuel costs by next year, cost reductions of at least $2 to $4 per wet metric ton of iron ore when the system is complete. This isn't a company going green because regulators told them to or because investors demanded it. This is a company going green because it makes them more competitive. Eliminating diesel that's imported, diesel subject to the same price volatility the Iran conflict has intensified across global energy markets. That elimination is now the economically superior choice, not the aspirational one, the rational one. And Fortescue isn't keeping it to themselves. They intend to license this system globally. They say hyperscalers, countries, and businesses have all expressed interest. The claim is that a complete replicated system, roughly 2 additional gigawatts, could be delivered for under $2.5 billion in about 18 months. And if that is real, it's not a mining story, it's an industrial template. Pair that with Rolls-Royce SMR securing up to £599 million from the UK's National Wealth Fund to begin constructing small, modular nuclear reactors at Wilfa on Anglesey, a site that generated nuclear power for 4 decades before closing in 2015. Factory-produced reactors returning to a site with existing grid connections and community familiarity with nuclear operations. 2 energy stories, 2 different technologies, 1 shared characteristic. Energy systems designed from inception to operate without fossil fuel supply chains. Not retrofitted, not transitional, built clean from the ground. The Century Report has tracked this build-out across scales, from Maximo robots installing solar panels at over 1 module per minute on March 30th, to Form Energy's iron-air battery installations, to the 5 offshore wind farms that became legally permanent just yesterday. The physical infrastructure of the post-fossil era is being assembled at mining operation and power operation scale, not demonstration scale, operating scale. All right, a couple of quick small releases from yesterday. Audio processing support for Gemma 4 models landed in Llama CPP's server, meaning you can now run local multimodal audio inference with Google's open source model family on your own hardware. And OpenMOS released MOS TTS Nano, which is a text-to-speech model with just 100 million parameters, and it runs real-time speech synthesis on CPU, no GPU needed, and it's multilingual, and it's open source. An algorithm read the entire human genome and found a weight loss peptide that was already there. A twin study doubled our understanding of how much genes determine how long we live. Regulators on 2 continents scrambled to coordinate over the same AI system within 5 days. And a mining company in the Australian desert eliminating fossil fuels from heavy industry isn't a sacrifice, it is a competitive advantage. What stays with me is the BRP discovery. Not the peptide itself really, but the method. Computational scanning of everything the body already produces, looking for what we missed. The method doesn't stop just at appetite suppression either. It applies to pain, inflammation, sleep, and mood. The human proteome is 20,000 genes deep, and we just demonstrated we can search it the way you search a database, exhaustively, systematically, at a speed that no human team could match. Very soon, watch for the BRP human trial timeline, because the distance from computational prediction to clinical candidate keeps compressing, and each compression resets expectations for the next one. Watch also for whether the UK Mythos briefings produce formal regulatory guidance or just more meetings, because the difference between those 2 outcomes tells you whether governance is keeping pace or performing pace. And keep watching Fortescue, because if that licensing model works, every mining operation on Earth just got a blueprint for getting off of diesel. We'll see you tomorrow.